The situation with Smokey shows you that he feels hurt and sad about the whole thing, but not in the same way that you see Saturated's situation. Now that's different. That's wow. That's different. It's a completely different kind of hurt. He doesn't like Saturated. He with Smokey, I can almost guarantee that he likes him. People remember that day very clearly in Lolcow Rancho, a day with a certain feeling in the air. It was payback time for Nova, and this time it was personal. Oh, I am far too insignificant still to be in Schindler's List. Oh, but you gave me something even better than being in the Schindler's List. You gave me your handwriting. Oh, yeah. Disclaimer. I'm not going to go in too much detail in all of this because I am not a professional and I don't want to appear as one or anything like that. I am just an amateur who loves to dwell in that subject often, but no, not really. I'm not a professional. And the reason why I say that is because graphology is more of an exact science in difference to like reading art or body language, which are more intuitive. They're obviously very precise and specific, but at least in my opinion, those are sciences that can be a little bit more intuitive. At least for me, reading people's art and reading people's body language, it's just instinctive to me. It's very natural to me. But graphology is way more strict. It's way more strict. It is also way more abstract because, well, for example, with body language, we are born with the instinct to interpret body language. You just need to be very persuasive and very in tune to your own natural instincts in order to know how to read body language. Art too. Art involves a lot of imagery and color and textures and things very similar to our very thoughts. You know, our minds work in images for the most part. So that is why it's a little bit easier and also more instinctive to interpret those things. But handwriting, that's a little bit trickier. I also know way less. I just learned that there is actually a science called graphology. I just learned that like a couple of years ago, like 3, 4 years ago, something like that. And then boom, Nova post a picture of his full handwriting in all of its glory, and I'm just salivating. Why isn't there more people interested in these things? Oh my god, how can you resist? What's wrong with you people? Oh my god. Look. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna point out two things that completely threw me off. I'm not gonna say too many opinions about it, but I'm puzzled. This surpasses me, to be honest. I'm not gonna go too much into it, but I can point out that when he wrote Sensitive Society, wow, okay. First of all, the E is backwards and it's in the shape of a tree. A lot of times when people are very focused on money, they tend to write certain letters in the shape of numbers. But the thing is that this E is completely like. First of all, I've never seen an E like that, and it can indicate lack of development. It's normal for children to write letters backwards like that, but in adults it can indicate like issues in cognitive development or stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe dyslexia. There's many things that can lead to somebody writing a letter like that, but I'm not going to go into it. Don't take what I'm going to say about this this letter right here has any kind of psychological analysis or anything like that, or anything too definitive, because remember that I'm not a professional or anything like that. If you have the credentials for that, and if you wanna explain more of anything that I see here and maybe correct or elaborate more or whatever, I'm gonna pin the comment. The little dots on the E on sensitive, the dots are on top of the T. That's, I've never seen something like that. But yeah, as I said, remember that this is not definitive diagnosis or anything like that. But I'm gonna start reading this letter as if this wasn't Nova, as if this was just a random anonymous letter that I just found. Okay, so for example, to start as like a little introduction for context, whenever you write something, this is very similar to what you do when you are doing art. In order to write something, you need to think about it. And in that process, you print that handwriting in a different personalized way. And that is when you can read someone's handwriting. Psychologically, you always represent yourself in the start of the text and everybody else on the ending of it. Plus, the sheet of paper or whatever surface you are utilizing represents the space and life in general. For example, you see that in this letter right here, there's a pretty normal, pretty healthy space in between the text and the edge of the left side of the sheet. This might be due to the fact that this is not one of those notebooks that can bend, so that means that the other half of the notebook gets in the way of you writing comfortably in the start of the sheet. But still, you always have to consider those things, like little details like that, in order to not muddy the waters when you're trying to read somebody's handwriting. For example, if they were sick, if they are tired, if they can't see very well, if they are writing in some kind of surface that is not stable, their age, all sorts of things. As far as you can see, it is a pretty healthy, normal space right there. The left side of the sheet represents your roots, your family, your mom. The more inclined you write to the left represents how attached you are to your roots, to your mom. You're probably more introverted. You probably are very attached to like traditions. You are probably not very outgoing. You're probably kind of shut in, probably a little bit more afraid of the outside world, stuff like that. But in this example now, it's somebody who probably doesn't even identify too much with their root family, and instead is not afraid to like get out of their nucleus at all. This is a very changing, very adaptable person actually. Somebody who is fast to think and adapt to different scenarios. He's also kind of a people's person. He likes to be the center of attention. The reason why I say that is because this is a handwriting that is fast. It is a mixture of cursive and print. Cursive handwriting tends to focus more on outgoing people. People focus more on socializing and like extroversion, maybe creativity, stuff like that. People that use more print tends to be people more steadfast into rules, stability, control. Also, when you see the lines on the sheet, you can see that his lines go from upwards to downwards and upwards. It's kind of like he writes in kind of a zigzag, right? That is what I was talking about earlier. Somebody ever changing, adaptable, not too rigid when it comes to their personality. This is different from somebody who writes in like an arc formation or stuff like that, but we don't see that here. Everything is very unstable though. Um, some of his letters are very tight, overlapping each other, and some are not. That means that the person is doubtful about situations, relationships. They probably know how to adapt to people. They need the feedback of people. They need people. One thing that I was probably not expecting to see in his handwriting is how firm and sure it is. His handwriting is straight, firm, and very clear, very readable. He has a solid self-image, a defined self-image. He is not as clingy to other people as you might have imagined him. And he's also not as detached, not as fearful of other people as you might imagine him. You would be able to notice that if his handwriting was inclined to the left or to the right too much. But, by the way, it is also a sign of inflexibility because his handwriting is way too straight. That is a pattern that doesn't change too much except for a couple of specific cases which are funny. Listen, I don't know, okay? As I said earlier, I will never be tired of making this disclaimer. I'm not a professional. I lack a lot of information and there's a lot of things that may fly over my head. But for example, I already explained how firm and steadfast he is on himself with his firm and really really big letters actually. Somebody who has almost kind of a narcissist, kind of like a megalomaniac almost, because the letters like expand all the way through, borderlining a little bit over a healthy self-image to a little bit of a narcissist. Somebody who is very quick to think, by the way, also. I don't know if I pointed that out already, but a lot of his letters are like almost cursive. As I said, he kind of mixes both, and the lines are entangled with the other. He doesn't stop the flow, and details like that represent adaptability and speed of thought. Just like, for example, the curviness of most of the letters. I'm not gonna go too much into that, but for example, the little ball shapes in the D, the O, on the G, the lower class G, stuff like that. All those round shapes represent imagination, the mind. For whatever reason, we as people usually utilize oval round shapes to represent spirit, mind, stuff like that. If you put enough attention into art everywhere, for example, the halos around people's head with like saints or like holy figures, thought bubbles in comics, whatever. We always represent the mind, the spirit with roundness, with round shapes. For example, in handwriting, you can see that in the things that I was talking about before, the little round shapes in like the E, whatever. Yeah, you get the idea. Also, his S's and the C's are very round. Everything is round, very thoughtful, very imaginative. But like he overlaps letters from one line to the other. That's not a good sign. That's a sign of somebody who doesn't know how to respect boundaries. Stuff like that. There is repressed energy, repressed repressed like aggression, emotion. We're gonna get into that. But for example, creeping lemur. I don't know if you can notice, but he used a lot of pressure there. There's a lot of ink in creeping lemur in Chilla too. There's even drippings there. There's also the possibility that simply the pen, is one of those kind of shittier pens that a lot of times drips way too much ink in occasions. You know how it is. There's also those kind of factors to read, but it's funny that you don't see that in the other names. For example, if you see the name Turkey Tom, you can see that you can even notice it in the picture. He applied very little force into writing that name. The letters are almost not as clear as Chilla, Tofia, Greasy Middle Finger, Creeping Lemur. You can notice the difference in strength and force and clarity in which he wrote each name. Turkey Tom, the handwriting, it's almost loose. It's almost like doodled. It's almost detached. He probably doesn't care too much about Turkey Tom as much as he does for Greasy Middle Finger, which you can see how much he emphasized on the F on finger. I don't know who like 90% of these people are. I know who Smokey is. I know Chin, fake spit. You see how much, I mean, it's funny, it's very obvious and all, but the fact that he had to write it on red, he touched a nerve. He touched a really, I'm surprised because from all what I've seen of him, I haven't really seen him defamating Nova in any way that is false or phony or whatever, or like distorted or anything like that. That's probably what it is. I forgot the actual name of the YouTuber. Is it Dovsfet? Something like that? I forgot it. It's Bratspet. Sorry. Damn it, Nova. Probably the fact that he is the most on point and like effective and keen on the mall. He interviewed his former friend that I haven't covered that video yet. He covers him in a way that is just very truthful and on point. That's probably what actually touches the nerve on on Nova instead of, for example, let's see, I don't know, Smokey. Even Chin is like the main archiver, but still, that he doesn't touch the nerve in the same way. I almost missed this detail about the way he wrote Smokey's name. The way he did it forms an arc, which means that he starts, first of all, he hesitates at first with the S and the rest of the word. So he hesitates. He doesn't know what to do with Smokey. He just doesn't know what to make of him, and he becomes very sad about the whole situation. He's very depressed about Smokey's situation. In contrast to what we see in the bottom, Medusa, but about Smokey, he forms an arc showing that he tries to like make something out of it, like hopeful of like fixing the situation probably, but then he just gives up and he loses energy, he loses steam, and his handwriting goes from going up, hopeful, to downwards, defeated. Different to like Medusa, for example, whoever that is. The writing is straight, which means like his feelings are probably not as hurt, but in not at least not in the same way. But he he starts losing like confidence in himself when he thinks about her. It starts with his letters big, confident, and then they go smaller. In difference to, for example, Chin below. He probably just feels very defensive about him. Just very defensive about Chin. Which would make sense because Chin is mainly just an archiver, not really an opinionated person in the same way that, for example, Smokey. I don't know if I'm reaching here because I don't know who this Medusa is, but for example, apart from the M, the rest of the word is written above, completely straight and above the line in comparison to the rest, to pretty much all of the text that you see in the entire sheet, right? Where the text goes like in a zigzag form. That detail of how he wrote her name might indicate that she might be critical of him somehow. That makes him feel like he wants to ignore her and be very contrarian towards her and be like, you don't tell me what to do. I do what I want. And so in his handwriting, it is reflected by him writing above the line, not respecting, the established rule set of, the surface where you should write. That is what I'm seeing there. I might be wrong. I might be reaching here, but that's what I see. The situation with Smokey shows you that he feels hurt and sad about the whole thing, but not in the same way that you see Saturated's situation. Now that's different. That's wow. That's different. It's a completely different kind of hurt. He doesn't like Saturated. He with Smokey, I can almost guarantee that he likes him. Maybe he feels sad in the way that he would have hoped to maybe be in good terms with them, be like buddies with them. Maybe Smokey sounds like the kind of person who Nova likes to hang out with. Maybe something like that. I don't know. With Saturated, it's a completely different kind of hurt. It's not from that at all. I'm surprised about Turkey Tom. I don't know. I've never seen a Turkey Tom Noah video. I've barely seen his name. I only know Smokey, Chin, Fake Step. What is it? Bruspeth. Saturated, Turkey Tom, Toph, Chilla, Creeping Lemur, and Sensitive. Oh yeah, Sensitive. ¿Eres mexicano neto? O nomás acá pocho? Nomás pocho, cara. So the rest I have no idea who they are, but Turkey Tom, as far as I know, is probably like the most famous of them all, right? Maybe the fact that Nova loves this to be the center of attention too so much makes him kind of shrug him off. He's bothered enough to include him in the list, but from all of them, he's the one who shrugs off more. Also, Smokey. If you see Smokey, is not as aggressively written. It's just kind of fast. It's not putting too much force into it. He hesitates with Smokey. Whenever you like write a letter and stop and then write the rest, that is hesitation. For example, you don't see the same way he wrote the S on straighten the bowl, solidus, sensitive society, saturated, you see? But with Smokey, he hesitates. He probably half likes him or something like that. And that's why he's just like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, Smokey. I hate him, but I don't know. Oh my god, Smokey. I hate him. Oh my god. But I don't know. Now, saturated. Ooh, saturated probably like hurts him. There's a little bit more of like an ink smudge on like the S and the A there, on the D at the end. And also the letters are more of like slashes. Everything's like slashes. You see it? Slashes and like a hook on the S and all that. Hooks represent incisiveness. It can be, well, at least I can interpret it both as positive and negative, like everything pretty much. But it can be a sign of assertiveness, but it can also be a sign of somebody who lashes out. And with saturated, it's different. It's like he wrote that name slashing, and also the angles, this is what I was talking about earlier. The angles of the letters, for example, the T, the D, they are more like regressed, inclining to the left. It's like, okay, imagine your body language when you're with somebody. When you're too clingy and too grabby with somebody that you like, for example, or whatever, your body language tends to lean forward that person, right? That body language can also mean that you're trying to be a little bit more dominating to that person, but you know how it is. When you want contact with that person, your body leans towards that person, right? And when it's the opposite, what do? You lean back. So the same thing applies to your handwriting. He's leaning back. The letters in saturated are leaning back. He kind of feels hurt, and it's also I don't know. I might be wrong, but I'm seeing a pattern where the word is like leaning upwards on the end. Yeah, there's no empathy towards saturated content. He's feeling defensive about him. Saturated hurts him. It's like the writing is like it's not like it's not writing. It's slashing. It's probably like, oh my god, saturated. Oh fuck this guy. Oh my god. He probably needs vengeance from him. It's hurtful. He feels hurt about saturated. Solid is whoever that is. Ooh, there's a lot of words there, like and like hooks. Yeah. Toes. Yeah, the fact that he had to actually adorn with the middle fingers just says it all. Why toes though? How many times does is Tofia an active Nova A logger? What why toast though? He is probably not sure himself. You see the O, there's very little, again as I said, very little imagination about toes. The ball shapes on the O and on the A, are very I don't know. Mayor Chinchilla. I don't know. Okay, wait. I'm seeing a thing about the pen here, and the double L there. This is probably one of those pens who just like leaks randomly ink. One of those annoying pens, it is. But still, even with that, you can see when he's applying a lot of force in there. Greasy middle finger. I don't know whoever that is. Like he was like, when he wrote finger. He has a lot of ideas about him or her. Is it a her or I don't know. But he starts writing that name up upwards, like floating. The letters are floating above the line, and then it goes down. Decay. Probably feel fat. I don't know. He has a lot of ideas about Gracie middle finger. And sensitive. Oh my god. What? I don't even know what to make of that. The little like horizontal line in the T that usually represents your thoughts. And then, he does that thing that I've never seen anywhere. The dot on the I, it's above the T. That's so unusual. And as I said, the E is backwards. That can represent a huge lack of development. As I said, a lot of huge. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not gonna go too much into it, as I said, because I'm not gonna go into that because I feel that surpasses me. That's as far as I'm gonna go. There's a lot more to read. There's a lot more that I wish I knew. Every letter represents something. You can read every single letter. Every single letter has a meaning. Uh, every angle. Every there's so much. There's so much that I wish I could go into. I'm not gonna. But if you, as I said, if you are actually very knowledgeable on this subject, and you want to teach us more, go ahead. I'll I'll pin it, and I'll learn most likely. And I'll throw in my own handwriting and my signature as a special treat for good measure. Signatures are very important. If you know, you know. Enjoy. Knock yourself out. Also, the fact that you can see a piece of torn sheet there, I wonder if the list was different before, or if the order was different, or if it wasn't happy about the way he wrote it. There's so much you can read, even from that. But as I said, I'm not gonna go into that anymore. I'm not. Alright, so I hope this was informative or entertaining or whatever. Yeah.